As leaders from around the world express hope for stability in Syria, President-elect Donald Trump says we Americans should stay out of it. Writing on Truth Social, quote, "This is not our fight. Let it play out. Do not get involved." Joining us now, senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and former Arab-Israeli negotiator at the State Department, Aaron David Miller, and host of Ayman here on MSNBC, Ayman Mohyeldin. Aaron, why should America care about Syria?
I mean, if I were providing Donald, the president-elect, with counsel, aside from the moral and ethical reasons, I would argue basically that ISIS can easily make a resurgence as it is in the Central Desert. And it's critically important for not just Syria, but for the region as a whole, that the United States maintain a measured support. We cannot redeem Syria. We cannot fix Syria. The Syrians are showing for the first time a degree of agency, less encumbered by external powers, even though some are continuing to use influence. We have an extraordinary moment here. To walk away from this, I think, would be a fundamental mistake, and it won't take an extraordinary investment. Syria is broke. We're not going to fund it, and we shouldn't fund it. But the Gulf can, Europe can, but the Americans have a unique role to play. Those are the talking points that I would use. I doubt if they're going to resonate.
Ayman, you've seen this play out before. You covered the Arab Spring. It's part of why Bashar al-Assad cracked down even further on the Syrian people in order to not let that happen to him. But the country's been in civil war now for, 13 years?
Yeah, close to it. More or less 10 years, yeah.
Yeah. So this group that's coming in and taking charge, I know the Americans bombed a bunch of ISIS strongholds, right, dozens of sites overnight in order to try to weaken them further and dissuade them from trying to build power there in a power vacuum. But this group that we're watching in Syria, who is this al-Jawlani fellow? Is he a reformer? Is this, turned toward reconciling his reputation, diminishing it or softening it? Is it real?
Well, I'll tell you who he is, and I'll tell you whether or not that's likely to happen. Okay. Who he is a Syrian who comes from a family near the Golan Heights of Syria, young man shaped by another American foreign policy disaster, the invasion of Iraq in 2003. When he watched America invade and topple the government there, he went and joined the insurgency in Iraq. So he was battle-hardened, if you will, by the years of war that took place inside Iraq, shaped ideologically by that, and then came back to Syria with the birth of the Arab Spring in 2011, wanting to do the same inside his own country. And then when that revolution that started out peacefully became militant with the crackdown of Bashar al-Assad against those peaceful protesters, people like al-Jawlani and others became more militant, more extremist, more ideologically aligned with al-Qaeda and ultimately ISIS. A couple of years into that alignment, if you will, his Nusra Front, which he was the leader of, said, this is not for us. This is not the kind of vision we want to have for the region, and actually broke ranks from al-Qaeda. There was some moments throughout 2016, 2017, where al-Nusra and al-Qaeda actually fought against each other, surprisingly, for certain control in parts of Syria, and al-Nusra ultimately prevailed. To make a long story short, he's now saying he is moderated, he has changed. He even acknowledged in an interview with CNN just last week that he wants to build a multi-pluralistic society in Syria that is based on institutions, not on individuals. Again, that's just rhetoric. But he is saying the things that people in the West and others in official positions want to hear coming out of that group.
That would be a change for a new regime in the region, coming up and saying we don't want to make it a regime that is based on religion or sectarian.
Well, he didn't say not about religion. Let's just be clear. Okay. So there is a chance that he is still going to be extremely conservative. They are a Salafist group. So ideologically, they are very religious. However...
But tolerant of other religions?
Yes, absolutely, because there are people who believe in political Islam, and their version of political Islam is that in their societies, you will always have minorities, and they can coexist, and they should live peacefully, and they should be treated. Now, by no means is that a justification for their vision. I'm just saying to you, that is how they have articulated their current vision.
Do we have an idea of what life will be like for women in Syria?
Well, Syria was a very secular society, and whether or not that remains under this type of government is very early to say. We're only 24 hours, 36 hours into this thing. I don't think we're going to be able to answer that. They have, again, tried to issue the public assurances that Syria will remain a secular society, one of tolerance and plurality. They've spoken to minority groups. They've made outreaches to Christian communities in various parts, including in Aleppo. But it is hard to answer all of these questions with all of the finer points so early on into this process.
Again, I know it's still early on, but I wonder if we can take anything away from what might this mean for Iran, Aaron?
I think this is a devastating defeat. Not only have the proxies proven to be hollow, Hezbollah and Hamas, but Assad and the Iranians, a non-ideological Shia Sunnis, Alawi Sunnis, non-ideological alliance that has lasted for decades, has now come apart. It raises serious questions about the efficacy of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. It raises tremendous questions about whether or not the Iranians have been wasting billions of dollars, and their public knows it, on proxies that have now proven to be. And now you have a critically important state actor for Iran is now gone. So I think this is a devastating defeat for Iran, and combined with what the Israelis have done to Hezbollah and the fact that Iran's ballistic missiles have proven to be also hollow, it raises the question of which way Iran is going, toward some sort of negotiation with the next administration or to weaponize. And I think we don't know the answer to that question. I'd only add one point. I think Ahmed's analysis is absolutely right. You know the one about the guy who jumps off the 10-story building, and as he's passing the 5th floor, somebody asks him how are you doing? He says, so far so good. All of the signals right now are positive, letting the international media in. HTS has even sent emissaries to the Assad stronghold in Kardaha to basically try to convey to the Alawis that they're not interested in retribution and revenge. But it's a long movie. It's a multi-confessional country. It's going to be very difficult to control. But the headlines are good, Katie. The question is, will the trend lines be?